is the one that you put on your endpoint. Do you know what an endpoint is? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when someone says endpoint? What is going to be an endpoint? It's going to be your devices. It's going to be your phone, your laptop, your tablet, anything. Most of you might be using Microsoft Defender for endpoint already, if you're Microsoft partners, which most of you already are. So you might be using Defender for endpoint and you already know how it basically works. So you can integrate it with any sort of OS. We'll come to OS in the next slide, but you can integrate it with Mac, Windows, iOS, anyone. These endpoint protection have endpoint behavioral sensors, which collects all the data, all the behavioral signals from the OS and sends this to our isolated cloud instance of Microsoft Defender for endpoint. Then it analyzes everything. So it analyzes all the signals that comes from your laptop phones, and using Microsoft's amazing threat intelligence powered by Microsoft AI, it generates hunters, any sort of security threats, uh, and it gives you notification if it observes anything within your data. So it does core defender vulnerability management. It reduces any attack surface. It has next gen protection, which is basically to reinforce a security perimeter of your network. It has endpoint detection and response. So it just not detects and investigate. It can also respond to any sort of attack and proactively find any breaches and create any custom detections. It does have automated investigation and remediation. So if it detects any sort of advanced attacks, it automatically investigates and does any sort of remediation if required. Now, you also have access to Microsoft Threat Experts, which basically is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint's new managed threat hunting service, which provides proactive prioritization and additional context and insights that further empower security operations team. Now, Defender for Endpoint comes in two plans, Plan 1 and Plan 2. Plan 2, again, two SKUs, depending upon what you want, more money and less money. But it supports variety of OSs, Windows 11, 10, 8.1, 7, Windows Server 2008 and up, Windows Virtual Desktop, 365 environment, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS. So it's important to note that it does support everything, even Linux, apart from Windows. Most of you already, I'm using it already for my Android phone. I have a Defender for endpoint enabled, which detects everything, whatever goes on, which is very helpful because you need to reduce any sort of attack surface as much as possible. You don't know what your employees are doing. They might click on something that's suspicious, that's a little bit of spam, and this will help you from downloading any sort of malware into your employee's phone or tablets or PCs. Now, next is privileged access device strategy. Now, to ensure that the most secure conditions are there for your company, ensure that at the time of purchase, you select the best vendor. So it is always recommended that whenever you're basically buying a hardware, don't buy it from a reseller. Or if you're buying used, or buy it from a trusted reseller, the vendor itself. So basically what we're trying to say is, and this has happened in many scenarios, company A tries to buy old laptops just to save money from a reseller, and then these laptops already had been infected with a lot of malwares, and we don't want that. We don't want to take that risk. So we want to eliminate the issue right from the start. So if it's a big organization, someone like yours, don't buy it from a reseller. Buy it either from a very, very trusted reseller or directly from the vendor. Whenever you buy a laptop or any device, make sure that it has TPM 2.0 installed, BitLocker driver encryption, UEFI secure boot, all the drivers and firmware distributed through Windows updates, so all your updates are done smoothly. Virtualization and HVCI enabled, has Windows Hello, which will help you to go passwordless, which Bhaskar talked yesterday. All DMA/IO protection, system guard, modern standby, which will make your physical laptop very, very secure. Physical laptop, very, very secure. So buy it from a trusted vendor only. Some of you from this call might make that decision. That's why it's super important. Some people may say, hey, it's simple logic, but sometimes people don't follow it and get compromised. We don't want that. Now, most of the companies will have something called as a privileged access workstation. So most of the companies will have something called as a privileged access workstation, which is basically a highly sensitive workstation, which might have access to all the R&D of your companies, or it might have access to your secrets or company secrets, keys, certificates, or it might have information which is critical to your stockholders, something like the company might go public tomorrow or the next decisions you want to take. So these sort of accounts are highly privileged. These sort of workstations are highly privileged. Now, when we talk from a security architecture perspective, we need to make sure that these devices are completely secure. They are completely dedicated administrative work accounts, and they are separate. They are separate from others or the other network completely. To do that, make sure your company uses something called as a jump box server. So this admin privileged workstation doesn't have any sort of a public IP. This should not be internet facing, should not have a public IP. If you want to log in into this, you will log into a jump box and then log into your admin PAW or privileged access workstation. But there are certain things that you need to make sure that when you are developing your PAW strategy, make sure it's isolated. It has no open ports to the internet, no open ports to the internet to stop any sort of DDoS attacks, any sort of compromising situation. But when you do that, make sure that the access doesn't get so hard that it's very hard for our legitimate employees to log into it. So from a usability risk, if accessing a PAW is too risky or too difficult, administrators or your employees would be sort of motivated to find a backdoor entry or create workarounds to log into this. We don't want that. So keep access to this easy, but close all the ports. Make sure from a supply chain perspective, you're buying these workstations or servers from a trusted vendor, a reputed supplier of not just hardware, of software as well. Prevent it from any physical attack. And the last one is many companies, they try to monitor, they use multiple tools to monitor any sort of workstation. Now, all these monitoring tools, they work on an agent basis. When they work on an agent basis, you will have to open up ports. So these workstations make sure that they are not sending data to tons and tons of monitoring tools. They don't have tons and tons of agents. So minimize the use of any management tools and accounts that have access to this admin PAW or privileged access workstation because it is highly sensitive to your business. Any questions? Simple? Everything simple? Common sense? Some people might say. All good? Okay. All right. Now next is virtual machine templates. Why would we use virtual machine templates? Yesterday, Bhaskar spoke a lot about virtual machine templates. So why would we use virtual machine templates? Anyone? Am I audible? What happened? Yes. Okay, might be typing something. Why would we use virtual machine templates? Anyone? Why would we use templates? repeatable architecture, to reduce repetitive conflict. Now, one thing is repeatable, one thing is to reduce repetitive conflict. But for example, oh, no, I'm not talking from that. Uh, I'm not talking from that perspective. Thank you, Harsh. I'm not talking from that perspective. I'm just saying yesterday we spoke about templates. So what we do is whenever we are, all our company has different policies. Um, you would require policies to basically stop easy to deploy, secure, and easy to deploy. Exactly. So what I mean to say is you have a team. The team is deploying hundreds of virtual machines every day, but you have some specific policy saying, hey, this virtual machine should be deployed like this. This machine should be deployed like this. Exactly, compliance. Now, instead of making sure that every time you create a new virtual machine, this has been followed, what we do is we create a virtual machine template. Now, this template is ready. You can customize the parameters of this. You can customize the parameters of this template, but you use the same template again and again. So all your employees are using the same basic template. Yes, it improves consistency. Yes, it reduces any manual error-prone errors, but it promotes reuse also. Along with that, you can harden this template itself. So you can basically harden this template itself. So you put all the security policies in this template itself, rather than worrying about the fact that your team members are using, if they're using the correct policies or not. You basically use this template. You deploy all your virtual machine using this template. So basically, you're hardening the template itself, which enforces all your security concerns and all your security policies itself. Amir, can you show an example? Yes. Now, if you look at this link, and I'll give you this link, there are tons and tons of templates available already. So all you need to do, you can create your own custom templates as well, which you might have done for labs also. So if I just look at simple Windows template, so you can see according to your requirement, you can either deploy simple Windows or you can deploy VM with monitoring and diagnostics. So if I want to harden my Windows VM, I can just say that, hey, every time we are going to do this, anytime we are going to create a Windows VM, we have to do it with monitoring and diagnostic, everything automatically enabled. And it's super easy to deploy. All you need to do is press click to deploy to Azure, sign in using your setup, and there you go. So your template is now ready. You can create your custom one also, but you can use these templates as well. So the template is ready. Then according to the parameters that you've put, you can edit the parameter and keep deploying your VMs again and again and again and again. So this way you make sure that there is no error when VMs are being created multiple times. Then we have something called as Bastion, which is pretty much the most important thing when we talk about our virtual network. I wanted to talk about it before. By now, I know you know that when we log into our Windows machine, you use RDP. If you log into your Linux machine, you're using Secure Shell. But the problem is, if I have an architecture, something like this, if I have a VNet and this VNet has, for example, this VNet has a subnet which has multiple VMs, instead of me giving these VMs public IP, because I need to access these VMs. So instead of logging into these VMs using public IP, what I do is I create a sort of a jump box server. I create a jump box server, something, I think this diagram is better. So I create this jump box server, also known as Bastion. This will, so anytime I want to log in into this Bastion, I first, step one, log into my Azure portal, step two, log into my Bastion, and then I log in into my Azure virtual machines. It's very similar to the to the jump box servers that you might have at work. And I'm pretty sure you have jump box servers at work. So what am I doing? I'm limiting opening of any ports out to the public. So these virtual machines are safe and secure. And all I need to concentrate is hardening this Bastion service only. That's it. So I just need to make sure that the Bastion service or this Jumbox server it's protected. And once this is protected, the entry to my virtual network is protected. So everything inside it is also protected. Now to log into Bastion, you need to log into your portal and then log into Bastion and then log into your virtual machines. But I think there is a preview feature where you can log into your Bastion directly from the internet as well. I think this is in preview at the minute, but this is also coming to be generally available pretty soon. Amit, can you show this to me on portal? 100%. So let me open up my Azure virtual machine. So first I need to create a Bastion service. I can create a Bastion service. Bastion service does take time to set up. Put it in a resource group, give it name, public IP, address, pretty much the same thing which you by now already know. Then once this is created and it's associated with one of the virtual network, you select which virtual network you need to associate with. Once it's ready and associated with a virtual network, then anytime you'll try to log in into the virtual machine, you can log in using your Bastion server. So once the Bastion is linked with this virtual network, which is where this virtual machine is, you can start logging in using your Bastion server. So rather than going and doing an RDP or connecting using RDP or SSH, I'm going to use Bastion to log into my network. My passwords and everything pretty much remains the same. And this pretty much opens my virtual machine exactly in the same way, but in another window. Make sure your pop-up window is enabled to open any pop-up windows. So it opens up like this. It takes a couple of minutes to come up. Any questions? Any questions? Are we good? I know I'm going a little fast, but are we okay? Just last couple of concepts left. Any questions when it comes to Bastion? No? Are you good? All right. The next one is Update Management Center. Now, Richard, what do you mean by ASR? Myself, I'm confused with acronyms most of the time.
Attack surface reduction.
Okay, all right. We have a dedicated topic. Day 4, we'll talk about attack surface reduction pretty much the whole day. So, yeah, don't stress about it. Basically, what we are doing is reducing the attack as much as possible. So, if you talk about bastions, if you talk from a bastion perspective, now, if I have multiple virtual machines, suppose these virtual machines open, that means I'm accessing them over the internet via port 22 or 21 or 3389. And hackers can also scan these ports. So I don't want that. So what I do is I want to limit my attack surface. So what I do is I create this concept of Bastion. So anytime I have to log into this virtual machine, I have to log in to this Bastion, through 443 or 3389 into this Bastion only. So this way my attack surface gets reduced a lot. Now I don't have to concentrate on individual virtual machines and secure and harden their entry point. I can concentrate on Bastion. Okay. Hope that makes sense. But day 4, we'll talk more about it. Now next is Update Management Center. Now all your Windows and Linux devices will always need one or the other update. Can be security update, can be feature update. Similarly, it can be either on-prem or cloud, anywhere, even in other environments. You can use update management to basically upgrade your virtual machines or your OS which has Windows or Linux. To do that, we need to download and so, log analytics agent, also known as Microsoft monitoring agent. We need to download the Microsoft monitoring agent on these Windows or Linux virtual machines, which can be in Azure, on-prem, or other clouds. So we need to download these agents on them. And what you can do is, step one, keep looking for updates. What is that update? What is an update? Step two, review that update assessment saying, hey, does this virtual machine need an update? If yes, check for a deployment window and then run an update using desired state configuration automatically. This is done generally using automation accounts, which I'll show you in a minute. So basically just updating your Windows or Linux virtual machine, nothing more than that. And how you do it is using Microsoft monitoring agent, also known as log analytics agent, pretty much the same thing. So step one, you keep looking, keep monitoring for updates. If the update is too far behind, check for a deployment window, run your automation scripts using DSC and get your virtual machine updated. Amir, can you show this to me on the portal? 100%. Okay, where is my portal? Now, if you look at the portal, there are two ways to access update management. Either you go on automation account first. So you go on automation account, you create an automation account, and you look for update management. So you look for update management and add your Azure virtual machines, add non-Azure virtual machines, which can be either on-prem or cloud or AWS or GCP, wherever. So not only just Azure, Linux virtual machines as well. So it basically puts a log analytics agent on your virtual machine. So if I add a virtual machine, it will just say, hey, should I download that log analytics agent into that virtual machine or not? Now, this method is going to get obsolete pretty soon. You don't have to go via automation account. You can do it directly from Update Management Center, which is in preview mode, but it will get up and running soon. So if you go to Update Management Center, you can see the update status of all your virtual machines and start basically upgrading all your virtual machines from here. Before you do that, just look for a window before you do any sort of upgradation for your machines. Okay. Sort of similar to AutoPatch, sort of similar. It's just that update management, you get it from a single pane, one window to monitor all your virtual machines all at once. Can we roll back? I'll have to see. I'll have to check that. I think you 100% can, but let me see how you can do it in a bulk way. I'll just check that and get back to you. Okay, so you can do it with Windows, Linux, or any on-prem devices. The last topic for today is disk encryption. The last topic for today, yes, you did it. The last topic for today is disk encryption. Now, when we talk about any virtual machine in Azure, it has two types of disks. It has a data disk, it has OS disk, and it has some data in its cache also. So I'll just say cache data. So it has two types of data disk, OS disk and data disk, and some data in its cache as well. Now, by default, Microsoft does do some encryption. By default, Microsoft does do some encryption, also known as server-side encryption. So Microsoft does this server-side encryption using Microsoft managed keys. But if you are not happy with Microsoft managed keys, you can use your own keys to basically encrypt data, which is a data disk and OS disk. I'll show you in a minute how to do it. But if you want to do it, you basically for Windows use BitLocker, a BitLocker feature for Windows VM, if you want to do customer managed keys. And for Linux, you use dmcrypt. Very important, not just from exam perspective, also from your real life perspective. So Windows VM uses BitLocker if you want to use your keys to do it, or for Linux VMs, you use dmcrypt. Okay. Now, there are different types of encryption. Azure Disk Storage Side Encryption, or SSE, this is already on by default. It encrypts all the data at rest, OS and data disk, but it doesn't do any temp disk encryption, or it doesn't encrypt your cache as well. But if you use Azure Disk Encryption, which is using customer managed keys, you can basically encrypt most of the stuff. So you can encrypt at rest, cache, temp disk encryption, everything. You can encrypt at host as well, which basically does temp disk encryption and OS disk and data disk as well. And the last one is confidential disk encryption, which uses TPM, or the hardware security modules, for encrypting your data. To do or use this, you need a special type of virtual machine, also known as confidential VM. So whenever you're choosing the virtual machine type, you have to choose the confidential virtual machine if you want to do this. Amen. Can you show this to me on portal? Yes. So if I go on my portal, if I go to any of my virtual machines, for example, this one, I hope it's running. It's not. Okay. So if you go on any of the virtual machines, you go on the disks. So you can see that it has a disk with server-side encryption, which is by default at the minute. But I don't want server-side encryption. I want my own encryption. So I can also encrypt it myself using my keys or Microsoft keys. But I need to attach it to a keyboard. So I can create a new key on the fly. It's created. Oh. So by default, you have server-side encryption ready. It does take some time. It will take its own time. So once this is up and ready, so you can just pretty much save it. And now you will see that the encryption type on this disk actually changes a bit. So from server-side encryption, it will now be server-side with ADE, which is Azure Disk Encryption. So we are doing something called as Azure Disk Encryption. So it will just encrypt this disk pretty soon. Okay, if you want to do encryption at host level, so you can, whenever you're creating a virtual machine, you can just, whenever you're creating the disk, you can do encryption at host, which will automatically encrypt all your temporary disk and ephemeral OS disk with platform managed keys, all disk caches, everything. So you can do multiple types of encryption. Coming back to the slide, I know it's confusing. First one, Azure Disk Server-Side Encryption, which is enabled by default. You can do Azure Disk Encryption as well. You can do encryption at host. When you are creating a VM, it gives you a small option. Or you can do confidential disk encryption. For doing this, you need to use specific types of VM, also known as confidential VM. I can send you a link if you want to do this one. I think it should be done by now. Should be, still takes time. Okay, this will take time, but once it's ready, you can see the new type of encryption there. So I did not. What I did was I went to my disks and tried to encrypt it. So currently it's server side with PMK. I have done it using my own keys. I can do it not only just for OS but for data disks as well. Okay, that's pretty much it for me for today. Any questions? You're gonna stop now. Any questions? You're done for the day, guys. I don't see any excitement in your eyes.
Oh, can you show that table again where you have different?
Okay, we're done for the day, guys. We'll take up. If you want, if you have questions, please go ahead, come off mute. Let's have a discussion. If you don't have any questions, um, it's time for your labs. AZ-500, any tips we will do in on the last day. I have a dedicated 1 hour session for you. Richard, the idea is that you should always use Bastion to log in into your virtual networks. That is the safest way if RDP and SSH is disabled. Yeah, Bastion. Yes, good. You're right. Any other questions?
Can you talk about that PMK?
The last one, confidential disk encryption?
Yeah.
Okay. So, confidential encryption, disk encryption binds your disk encryption keys to a virtual machine's TPM. So, that virtual machine that we created, it will bind it to its TPM and make protected disk contents accessible only to that virtual machine. So, in this scenario, the TPM and the PM, which is the guest, will also be encrypted using those keys which you select. It's currently available only using confidential VMs. I can give you a link to those confidential VMs as well.
So if you're saying if it is mapped with TPM, the VM cannot be ported.
Yes.
To different.
Yes. That is the limitation for this one. So I'll just give you this link, which if you're deploying it in a real time, it's a little bit expensive to do it, but all up to you. Will there be a voucher given after this training? Yes, there will be a voucher. The validity, I don't know. I'll talk about it on day 4. If I tell you now, I don't think it's not fair to others. Some people might not attend my course, so I'll just talk about it on the last day. But I'll talk about validity and the vouchers on the last day. 100%.
I have a question. If
yes.
Just can you hear itself.
Okay.
So in the last column, that is Microsoft Defender for cloud disk encryption status, we can see the healthy only for Azure disk encryption, and in that also for Linux versions for customize does not work for custom Linux images. That then how come it will be healthy for them?
It's yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just that we are working on this one at the minute. We are in process of updating the Microsoft Defender. So soon, once it's there, it's just for the custom Linux images, not the Linux images available with us, but for custom Linux images only.
Okay, so for other Linux images, which are normal one, for that it will claim the status as healthy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But they're in the process of. I'll talk about the AMA, the Azure Monitoring Agent, maybe day after. If you use that, then it can report to Defender for Cloud also, making it healthy. Okay. What about others? Any good questions? I have some questions for homework. I know. I have noted them down. Tomorrow I'll start with containers and Kubernetes a little bit, and then we will move on to Azure Key Vault, and then we will move on to storage security. Okay, all right. Now Now, what labs do we have to do today? Now, today we have to do just two labs. Just two labs for today is network security and application security group and Azure Firewall. That's it, two labs. Unfortunately, it won't be applicable to SCN AZ-900. I'm sorry. Okay, any other questions? Yes, only this one. Okay. Any other questions? Good questions all around. We have 2 hours for labs, and it's pretty enough, decent for doing these two. They're pretty small ones. Okay, with that, I think you can have a quick break and start labs. You can go for a walk and start